I want to start out with the Wizards and Mr. Steinberg with you. Nene's injury, 6 weeks, sprained MCL. Can the Wizards still make the playoffs? They're currently in the 5th seed.
I think absolutely. I was actually looking at the schedule this morning. The way their schedule breaks down, they have a bunch of games left against really good teams, but they also have a whole bunch of games against really bad teams, and they don't play a lot of the teams in the middle. They have 12 of their 26 games that they have left are against teams with a winning percentage of under 400. That's bad. I mean, we're not talking about mediocre. We're talking about bad. And I think that the Wizards without Nene are not bad. They're just kind of obviously not as good. They're not a threat to do anything in the playoffs without him. But I think that they're still better than the Philadelphias and the Orlandos of the world. And I think if they can take care of business against those bad teams, they don't even have to worry about beating the good teams. If they, I mean, obviously this is kind of readjusting the goals a little bit, but if they go something like 500 down the stretch and finish 500 for the year, they're definitely in the playoffs. And then if they get him back, then we can start having that conversation again. So I think absolutely they should still make the playoffs.
Now, you said they're not that bad without him. They've lost 6 of 7 this year without him, and their current record without him in the lineup since he's been a Wizard is 8-34. How can you say that?
I mean, I think some of that circumstance is a pretty small sample size that you're looking at for this season.
Sure.
Last season, I'm not really worried about because a lot of those games were without John Wall last year.
Right.
So the way that John Wall is playing, John Wall is obviously the key, the most important player. They don't need a ton from some of these guys that are going to be replacing him. Certainly, offensively, they don't need a ton. I think they need one of these other big guys, maybe Booker or Gortat, to sort of try to replace what Nene does defensively. And I don't know if that's really possible. But again, I think that a team with Wall and some of the other parts that they have is just better than some of these flailing, horrible East teams that they played on the stretch.
They're 14-14 at home, 14-14 on the road, 5-5 in their last 10. LeVar, if that's not a 500 team, the definition of a 500 team, I don't know what is. Do you agree with Dan? Do you think that they can make the playoffs and stay around that 500 level without Nene?
I think they can make the playoffs for all those reasons that Dan just gave, as a matter of fact, due to the strength of schedule. They have shown that historically during this season as well, that they don't play very well against poor teams at times as well. So I think that you can't undervalue what Nene brings to the table. I think we have to wait and see if this team can continue to play at a high level without his presence on the court. And I think that would be the most prudent way of approaching it, for the simple fact that you have to have that leadership. You have to have that presence that holds guys accountable and can kind of calm guys down and slow things down a little bit from a leader standpoint when games may seem to be getting out of hand or just needs to be reeled in just a little bit. We're going to find out if they have somebody else outside of Nene that can provide that presence, that leadership value. And if they have that, then you could assume that they may make a really, really strong run. If they don't, I wouldn't be surprised if they start losing games that they shouldn't lose.
Can I say too, I mean, obviously this is like forecasting way into the future, but a couple of things that would concern me about all of this. First of all, they say 6 weeks. I think the Wizards said 6 weeks in a press release, which gets you up to like maybe 1 week before the playoffs. The Wizards, and a lot of teams, but the Wizards especially, have had this kind of history of guys not coming back exactly when they say they're going to. And if that happens here, once you push it into the first week of the playoffs, I mean,
forget the Wizards. Nene has a history of not coming back.
Nene does too, but I mean, with
Right.
Otto Porter thing, Gilbert Arenas thing, John Wall last year, all of these things have dragged on longer than we thought. It doesn't have to drag on for much longer than 6 weeks for that to kind of ruin what I was talking about. And I guess the other thing is, even if the Wizards do stay above 500 and get that playoff spot, it's in a really kind of bunched up situation right now with the 5, 6, the 4th seed, all of these seeds. If you get down to 7 or 8, we sort of know that's not going to go well against Indiana or Miami.
So that's not going to go well.
And so I mean, if there's any way for them to keep their heads above that 6th seed, that would really be key.
We got to figure if they're in that range, the next question is going to be how close Nene is going to be to coming back. Do you bring him back before the playoffs? Do you risk that? Do you rest him until the playoffs?
Presumably he'd have some kind of minutes limit.
You mentioned it earlier, but they only have 8 games remaining out of 26 against teams with winning records. So there is, the path is there for them to succeed with that, and we'll see how it goes.
But it's, I mean, not to toot our own horns. Anyone who watches the NBA or the Wizards would have said this, but we've been saying all year, it's kind of like a matter of time until something happens.
Yep.